Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Jamie Dawn. I am your professional psychic advisor, success coach, and evolutionary revolutionary astrologer. And I am bringing you this video for the week of June 8th through the 14th. And of course, it is 2020. Who knows? Maybe people will go back and re-listen to rewatch these videos over the next several months and maybe even years. And we're at a very historical time here in our country, the United States, as well as around the world. And it's been a very interesting, difficult, challenging, as well as inspiring couple of weeks here. And between COVID and the situation with our country and the issues around racism and around discrimination and how we need to heal. We need to talk about these things, and we need to bring to light that there is a dynamic happening where we can no longer avoid or pretend that certain issues aren't there for us, because they're up. And it's important that we can link arms. And I've said this 100 times before, but it's important to link arms, to lean in and lift each other up, because we're in this human race together. And I'm offering a perspective this week where we've had a full moon eclipse. It was a partial eclipse on last Friday, the 5th, and all of the intensities and the emotions and the fiery, because it was in Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, the fiery emotions and even literally fiery experiences that we have had. This week will start to feel a little more subsided, maybe a little less intense. And I think the one thing that we have to be careful of, especially, we've got Neptune and Mars and Pisces, and with that kind of energy, it can sometimes not dumb it down, but temper the temper of Mars. And it can bring in, I love Mars and Pisces because I see it as the spiritual warrior. And with it sitting next to Neptune, has a way of cutting through the illusion and getting to the truth. And so hopefully this week in particular can bring us some invitations, some new ways in which we can invite each other to the talking table, where the negotiations, the understanding, the education comes up. And this is where the Sagittarius Gemini nodes are also pointing to. We're entering into this 18-month cycle, as I've mentioned before, where education is important, where communication is king, and where letting go of old dogma, old beliefs is going to be the healing salve that we can put on the wounds of ourselves, of our souls, of our generations. And so this is an important time for us to be able to walk through the fire and to know that when we're doing it together, we're not going to be burned up. What will be burned off are the things that no longer serve us. And so all of that to say that this week in particular, my perspective is paying attention to where the moon is going to be transiting. And right now, the moon is in serious stoic, achievement-based, status, concerned image, Capricorn. And the moon, just to give a little background for those who are not familiar, the moon is where we instinctually go. It's our unconscious, habitual nature when we feel threatened, or when we need to nurture ourselves, when we need to feel good, when we need to mother ourselves. It's that mother archetype. And I had a chance to jump in on Tisha Michelle's wonderful inner child work class that she's been putting on last night. And we talked about the inner child in astrology, and the moon points to that inner child. And what we're here to work through is how to touch on these wounds, and we can't heal what we don't feel, so you can't ignore it. And when the moon is transiting through these last signs of the zodiac back into Aries this week, the first sign of the zodiac, we may be finishing up some things that we have an opportunity, to wrap some things up that have been scratched open over the last couple of weeks. And just keep in mind, the moon moves through the zodiac sign about every 29 and a half days. So that's why it's a month or a month. So here we have the moon in Capricorn, and then it will transit into the next sign, which is Aquarius, and then Pisces, and then Aries. And so that we begin the following week with the moon in Aries. So all of that to say, what can we be working with? The moon also, remember, goes through phases. It's considered the maiden, the mother, the crone. So the maiden in the morning, the mother in the afternoon, the crone at night. Our moods, the way that we pick up energy, especially those of us who are highly sensitive, can feel the shifting of the moods of the moon. And so it's important, I feel, to track this week, because the moon is, as it transits through the different signs and touches in different aspects and areas of the planets, because we have Mercury in Cancer. Cancer is the moon, it's ruled by the moon. Again, the moon archetype. Mercury are thoughts, how we process information, how we connect. So if you think about it, and this is the mercurial thing, right? The thinking mind, in Cancer, how do we nurture our thoughts? How do we feed our mind? Because how we feed our mind is just as important as how we feed our body. So the moon in Capricorn may have our thoughts around how we can achieve, how we can bring more success in our lives, how we can accomplish certain goals or aspirations that we have set after this new moon, or excuse me, this full moon that we had this last weekend. So some things were burned off and cleared away. Now we're going, how do we achieve the common goal that we have decided we want for ourselves or each other? Then it moves into humanitarian loving Aquarius, rebellious Aquarius, the forward thinker, the visionary. So it may be that we start to, like I say, reach our hands across the aisle and say, hey, you know what? I have this idea and I know I can do it on my own, but I would be so much better, so much stronger. This idea could take so much more form if we did it together. And then teams or groups can get started working on a common cause or a common goal. And then as the moon moves into Pisces, then there's this sextile happening to Mercury where it's like, okay, now that we've built our team and we've been able to find this common ground and we want to work together, how do we bring it into this beautiful, compassionate, it's a very healing opportunity that we may say, this is why we want to do what we do, and we do it with selfless service. It's a way of being able to, we'll say, sacrifice the individual ego for the bigger picture. And then what can happen is that when the moon moves into Aries at the end of the week, into the weekend, is that then we're wanting to implement that. We're wanting to be fearless as we put it out there into the world. And maybe it's a pioneering idea or a thought, or I would even venture to say that during this time that we may find new breakthroughs of this week, for maybe the COVID, or for how we can talk about racism and how we can talk about those tougher issues that many are afraid to talk about. And now, beginning of next week, we may find that people are offering it and getting on board and enjoying it, or picking it apart and saying we can do it better. But I would venture to say that we could have some new ideas, some new ways of doing things coming up in the next week or so. This is also a good time to mention Venus is still retrograde in Gemini. And she is, as she's retrograding back into the 8th and 7th and 6th degrees of Gemini, is that she may be activating where we are feeling power or powerless in relationships or in finances, and we need to work with it. Some things from the past, I will say that there are probably going to be people from our past that continue to pop up for healing, for conversations, for connections. Mercury is now in shadow. It started June 1st, 2nd, depending on where we are in the world. And Mercury will retrograde on the 17th. So I'm going to keep pointing to that. But this is an opportunity for us to come back to say, where's family? Where is home? Where do we belong? Where do we nurture, as I mentioned before? Where do we nurture our thoughts? How can our words become nurturing? How can our connection, who is our family? Maybe it's not family of origin. Maybe it's family of like-hearted people. And so as we continue to work in this energy field, I'll bring us back to the moon just to wrap this up for this week, is that as we continue to work with the energy of the moon, pay attention to your subconscious, we'll call it conditioned tendencies, those reactivities that happen. The way to work with them is to pause, take a breath, and notice. Notice what's happening inside of you first. And what do you need in order to approach the person or situation in a way that maybe could change a pattern for yourself, that you've said, I don't want to behave that way. I don't want to react that way. I don't want to say something that I might regret. And if those are unconscious patterns within yourself that you've said, I don't want to do that anymore, then this is the invitation. We are going to have opportunities to be triggered where we get to practice pausing, checking in, and then responding. Or we may just say what we need to say because we're soothing ourselves. It's a grand experiment. We're here as perfectly imperfect humans because it's not about getting from point A to point B. It's about enjoying the journey. It's about gathering information, having experiences, and evolving beyond what we thought, what we were forced as young children, adults, whatever, to accept as a truth. Here we are. If you're older and, like in my age group, the 30s, 40s, 50s, that we have a chance to do it differently. And I'd love anybody who is in their teens and 20s watching this to understand that you have a choice now, that you can evolve even faster and beyond what those in my generation may have. So I'll leave you with that. I really appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, commenting. The comments should be turned back on here to these videos. You can find me at jamiedawn.com when to listen. And I'm so grateful to be able to sit here and offer this to you. So take care, everybody. Have such a great week. Pay attention to the moon and where it's going to be moving and transiting. If you have your natal chart, you'll be able to see where it's activated. So it's right now in Capricorn. So where that's activated, then moving into Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. I'd love to hear how it changes for you, how you change with it, what may show up. All right, I'll talk to you next week because we have a new moon eclipse coming up in 10 days. So I'll talk to you then. Take care, everybody.